and welcome to part 2 of SmallRig's virtual presentation here at ProFusion 2020. My name's Hahn and I'm your host. In this part, we'll be taking a deeper dive into how to actually rig out your camera rig. For the first part, we'll be doing a basic DSLR setup featuring the Blackmagic Pocket 4K. With that camera, we'll be doing a basic handheld rig, shoulder rig, along with a DJI Ronin S rig. In the second half of this video, we'll be taking a deeper dive into how to rig out a more professional camera. And for that, we'll be using the Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro G2. We'll be doing a shoulder rig as well as a rig on a tripod. Now, these rigs are rigs that I use every day as a documentary and commercial filmmaker here in California. You can take what I'm teaching you today about rigging and apply it to almost any camera that you would see in your everyday use. While I might be using a Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro G2 and a Pocket 4K for these examples, you could easily swap in a Sony a7S or a Red Komodo for either situation that you might be in. Really, SmallRigs products are designed to be universal. So while the basic camera and cage might change, the overall amount of products should be universal between cameras. Using NATO and screw-ons, you should be able to rig out your camera with most of the parts you are seeing here. While there will be some specialized parts for these cameras, and there are specialized parts for some other cameras in SmallRigs lineup, these parts should mostly be universal. So without further ado, let's get into rigging out our first camera, which is the Blackmagic Pocket 4K. And to start, we'll do it in a basic handheld rig. Here in front of me, you'll see everything that we're going to be using to rig out our Pocket 4K today. So let's actually start by checking out the camera here. This is the Blackmagic Pocket 4K. I bought it when it was initially released, what was that, 2 years ago now? It has been a workhorse for me. I use it as a B cam, gimbal cam, or a handheld cam if I'm traveling. What it breaks down to, the camera is a micro four thirds sensor. With a micro four thirds mount, so I use a Metabones mount to make it to EF for standard Canon lenses, and then you can even adapt that up to PL for more professional lenses. So let's start out here with the first part that we're going to add to that rig, which is our Pocket 4K cage. Now, the cage is really simple here. I have one adapter here to turn that 3/8 thread into a 1/4-20 thread, but other than that, this is your standard SmallRig Pocket 4K cage. To attach this to the camera, on the bottom, you're going to have a screw that goes into the camera itself, but it also is going to have these 2 locking pins that go in the bottom just for an extra layer of security. So why don't we start by putting our camera in our cage. One of the really cool features of this cage is that it actually has a built-in Allen wrench right at the bottom here for attaching the camera to the cage. So it really is handy having a magnetic Allen wrench right there on the cage. So let's start by attaching our bottom locking pin. And I'm just going to screw that right into the camera, just like so. I'll wait to torque it down until I have my top mounted screw as well, which you just flip the camera over, and the top screw goes right on top, where a hot shoe would normally be on a lot of DSLRs, but on the Pocket 4K, it's actually just another screw hole. So now I'll go in and actually torque down these screws, not heavily, but just enough to ensure that the camera is safely locked in its cage. Once that's done, I will store my handy Allen wrench back in the camera cage, and I think the next piece of gear I'm going to go for is our Metabones support. Now, the important thing to remember when you're using a lot of larger lenses like this Zeiss CP2 right here is that these camera mounts aren't exactly designed to hold these lenses by themselves. For this example, yes, we will be holding it by itself, but I do highly suggest that you use a lens support, which SmallRig makes when using these lenses for a long time, because they do get quite heavy, and for that reason we're going to be using a Metabones support, which helps to reduce fatigue on the lens mounts. So it's pretty simple. There are 3 screws for this part. There is 1 main screw that goes into the Metabones itself, and then 2 that go into the cage. So let's start off by attaching it to its meta bones. And for that, I'm going to use my handy dandy SmallRig multi-tool. And I'm just going to start screwing that in. Nice and simple. I'm not going to torque it down because I need to add our 2 smaller screws into our cage. Got that nice and lined up. Those should just slot right in. And for that, we'll go to our smaller Allen key here on the multi-tool. And we'll just screw those in real quick. Now, the great thing about having all these SmallRig parts on my Pocket 4K is I really feel a lot safer carrying this camera around, because I just feel like there's a lot of protection now on the camera versus whether if I was just carrying it around without a cage on it or any of these supports, that something potentially bad could happen if the camera was dropped or just mistreated. So now the next piece of gear I'm going to reach for is our 15mm rod base plate. Now this is a really simple base plate and it can be used with a variety of cameras, but I chose this one because it's lightweight and it's simple to use. So let's start attaching it to the camera. There are just 2 simple screw holes in here that we'll use on this Pocket 4K cage. And when I line it up, I try to line it up right in the middle so my camera is nice and balanced. And the nice thing is that since this base plate is in the SmallRig ecosystem, there are usually holes that are designed to help fit this in there. Now my screws are in. I'm going to screw them in real quick, adjusting to another size on my multi-tool. And I'm going to screw in my base plate. Now that that's done, let's move on to the side of the camera. And I'm going to attach my right angle adapter for my HDMI and USB-C port. This allows me to send a signal out to either a monitor or a wireless transmitter, or even both if you have splitters. And the USB-C is so I can capture data to an external device, whether it be a Samsung T5 or other SSDs that are out there for this camera. And on the side of the camera, the actual part itself is made out of rubber. So what you do is you slot it in there and make sure that you're into your HDMI and USB. And then you take this additional screw and screw it in. And you gotta make sure everything's lined up so you're not bending any pins. Now that I screw that in, I'm going to tighten it down with my multi-tool, just again to add an extra layer of security. Looks like it's our middle one. Nope, it is our smaller one. All right, perfect. So now you can see how our camera is being built. We have our base plate, we have our cage, and now we have our USB adapter on here. Next, let's move on to the back of the camera. And what we're going to do here, this was a really great invention from SmallRig when it first came out. This is the clip-on sun hood for the camera. And boy, I can't tell you how many times this has saved me on sets outside, mainly because the Pocket 4K does not have a folding monitor. While there are aftermarket adapters to give you a folding back monitor on the Pocket 4K, it does not come with one from factory. So the way this goes is there's 2 screws in here that attach to this plastic bracket here that then hold the actual sun hood on. But I decided to just keep that part always connected, so I can just simply take that one screw that's on top there and screw it in to save me time when I'm on set. Because when you're on set, let's be honest, time is money, and it is crucial to, while you move fast, to ensure that you are always doing what's best for the safety of the camera. So now let's move on to the side, and now we're going to be attaching an additional 15mm rod adapter. What this would be used for primarily, especially on a gimbal, I would be using this as a holder for my Tilta Nucleus Nano, and that is what I use as my primary wireless follow focus. but you can attach lots of things. You could attach a manual follow focus to this. This is just what I would be using as an additional holder for 15mm rods. We're just going to screw that in quick. And there are just 2 1/4-20 screws going into the side of the camera here. All right, and next, why don't we do, we gotta actually insert our 15mm rod. Don't forget that. If you put it on your holder, make sure you actually put in your 15mm rods. I'm waiting to do the 15mm rods on the base plate until one of our last products. All right, so now you can see our camera is really starting to take shape in our handheld rig here. Why don't we do our Samsung T5 side handle next? I gotta say, this is one of the best parts that was made specifically for the Pocket 4K. What it allows us to do is we have this wooden handle here that is very ergonomic and great for handheld use. But the coolest thing is that on the inside, it actually holds a full Samsung T5 SSD. Now these come in a variety of sizes as far as data is concerned, but it's really great for when you're out in the field, especially shooting documentaries like what I do. It allows you to capture just an incredible amount of data and never have to worry about running out of card space. Now on this, there is a simple lock here and then an additional flip out quick release to ensure that your Samsung T5 stays in the handle no matter what. And the great thing is that on the side, it is a NATO, so that means it'll be extra speed. And on the side of the Pocket 4K cage is a built-in NATO rail. So we're just going to quickly slide that in and tighten it down. And on top, we're going to take our USB-C cable that'll go from the top of the SSD in the handle over to the side of our side-mounted USB-C. Now, next we will do our NATO top handle, which again is very simple. You just slide on and tighten down. Now you're really locked in there with your NATO grips. Why I chose the wood handles over maybe the aluminum ones is just personal preference. I prefer the feel of them. I feel like they give me better ergonomics. Others out there might prefer rubber coated handles or aluminum handles. Really, it just comes down to personal preference. Whatever you prefer using on set is what's best for you. Now, one of our final products, now we're going to do our power solutions for the Pocket 4K. For this demonstration, there will be a V-mount plate on the back along with a Sony NPF adapter that'll go, I'm going to put it right on the side of my camera here. But this just demonstrates the different power options from SmallRig, power adapter options from SmallRig, because the Pocket 4K is a really power hungry camera. Now this Sony NPF adapter just screws in on the top here with a simple 1/4-20, and I will tighten it down. It also has the option to be tightened with a flathead screwdriver. Once that's nice and tightened down, I'll slide in my Sony NPF battery. And then I will take my adapter from our barrel connector to our LEMO pin connector. And that just goes in the side of the NPF battery plate and then down into the camera over here. Now, this is one of the more tricky connectors to get in, but just for the purpose of our demonstration, you can see that that is how I would rig it up. But to save time, I won't plug it in because it can take time. On the bottom here, now we'll do our 15mm rods by inserting them into the base plate, leaving some space on the front for a matte box or a follow focus, but also leaving on the space on the back to attach our battery plate. Now that those are inserted, you simply tighten them down with this handle over here. Make sure they're nice and safe. And then you take your battery plate and it goes right on the back here. Now, I wouldn't normally use a battery plate with a handheld rig because as you can see, it's actually covering the screen. But with that, you can attach an EVF, which I will show you in the next rig, which will be a shoulder rig. But for now, let's talk about our final element here in our handheld rig, which is lens choice. Now I have two lenses here. I have a cine lens on the left and a Sigma photography lens on the right. The main difference here is that the cine lens has gears on it, and you can see is actually quite a bit bigger, and the photography lens does not have gears. Both are primes. The cine lens has a declicked aperture, so you can turn the aperture just by turning this wheel here, much like a focus wheel. For my preference, I'll be going with the Zeiss CP2, just because it is my favorite lens series. This is a 50mm, which is right in the middle of the focus range of the CP2 primes. And personally, I think you can shoot almost anything on a 50mm. It is the perfect lens if you just need to shoot a documentary or something that it requires speed, because you can always go in to get tighter shots or move out to get wider shots. But really, that's going to conclude our build here for our basic cinema handheld rig. And in the next rig, we are going to take a look at how to take this and put it on a shoulder rig. Welcome to part 2 of our video here. Now we're going to be building a basic shoulder rig for the Pocket 4K or any DSLR you might be using. If you watch part 1, I am starting off with my cage already on the Pocket 4K, along with our Metabones mount and our base plate and our side HDMI and USB-C right angle, just to save us some time here. But why don't we start off by actually attaching our 15mm rods and our power. For this rig, I'm going to be using a V-mount battery plate. I won't be having a V-mount battery on here, but normally there would be a V-mount battery and a power connector. So if we start by doing that, and then we're going to attach our V-mount plate on the back here. And what that allows for is us to use a cinema professional style battery on the back of our DSLRs. Now, once we have that, since this is going to be a shoulder rig, I am going to attach our top handle first, because we are going to be using an external monitor as an EVF, and for that we'll be using a SmallHD 502. So why don't we start by attaching our NATO aluminum side handle with two 15mm rod holes in order to support your EVF needs. So let's slide on our NATO handle here and lock it down. And once we're done with that, we're going to take our segment of 15mm rods here, and I like to use it in the bottom of the two holes. That way I still have a good access to a grip up here, and it doesn't feel like it's getting in the way of anything. Once we slide that on in, and we lock the clamp that's on the back there, that still feels nice and ergonomic, and I have a good grip on it. So once we have that set down, let's take care of our EVF build quick. For the EVF build, we're going to be using this piece of NATO rail along with this 15mm rod to NATO rail adapter. This piece of NATO rail, the NATO rail itself, the EVF bracket, and this adapter all come as part of a kit on SmallRig's website. So let's start by attaching our 15mm rod adapter here. And that's just going to go on the 15mm rod. And we're going to take our SmallRig multi-tool. Once that's tightened down, we are then going to take our piece of NATO rail and slide it in there and lock it down. We're going to rotate that forward so our EVF is forward of our face. Next, I'm going to take my EVF bracket. I'm going to press down the NATO rail button and slide it on. You have to kind of get this right in the right place so everything slides in nice and easily. Just like that. There we go. And I'm going to lock it down with this quick release tab right there. And then flip this up so we can mount our monitor to it. And we're going to do that in a second. But first, before we go to that, let's go down here and grab our base plate. For the actual shoulder rig, I'm going to be using the VCT14 quick release plate This is the tripod plate right here. You'll need this if you are using this shoulder pad. There are other shoulder pads that you could use, but I have chosen to use this one here. And for that, we are going to put this actually back down. And on the VCT-14 shoulder plate, this plate that you actually attach to the camera, as you can see, comes off to allow for easy installation on other cameras. So I'm going to take our 2 screws here. I'm going to flip our camera upside down to our base plate. And then these are going to screw in with 2 screws to our base plate. One second, just to get these started. I'm going to grab my multi-tool and our flathead screwdriver adapter here and tighten these down nice and tight so there won't be any problems later on. And actually tighten them by hand almost pretty much all the way, and then do a final torque with the screwdriver. There we go. So now I'm going to take that and my VCT-14 base plate, and this is going to just slide in past this quick release here, and then I'm going to lock it down. Now you can see that our shoulder rig is starting to take shape here. We still have a lot going on this half, but as you can see, this is starting to be a nice, I wouldn't say compact, but about as compact as shoulder rigs can get. When you see the professional camera that we'll be rigging out later in this video, you'll see really shoulder rigs can get quite big. But let's keep moving on. Next, I am going to build out my handles. So for this, I'll be using a dual handle setup. We're going to start with our Airy Rosette adjustable handle here. I typically like them to be all the way extended out. That way I have the most comfortable grip possible. And for that, we'll just take our Airy Rosette and we'll just screw it in to the handle. Perfect. Screw it in until it's nice and tight and the rosette teeth are all locking together. Perfect, that's not going anywhere. And then we'll do the same. For the second handle, I've been using the Black Magic handle that came with the camera originally. Actually, that was with the original Ursa Mini way back when. I had the Ursa Mini 4K before I had the Pocket 4K and the Pro G2. But it works the same on SmallRig parts. You take it and you use the adapter, actually no adapter, you take it and you just screw it right into the Airy Rosettes. And after that, we're going to attach that to our 15mm rod dog bone here. And this allows us to take the Airy Rosettes and attach them to 15mm rods. So I'll take that and just screw it right in. Nice and easy. And we'll do that on the other side as well. Now the Black Magic handle is slightly taller, so you do need to compensate with the adjustable SmallRig arm. That's fine. That's why these arms are adjustable. And then we're going to screw in our other rosette. This will actually be attached last after the lens, but I figured we might as well get them built. So now that those are built, I'm going to set them down. And let's go for the next piece of gear. And for that, let's attach our monitor now. So the SmallHD has a couple mounting points here, but we're going to go on the top one here. And we're just going to screw it in right on top here. And for that, there is a small standard screw or a flathead screw. So I'm going to actually do this upside down so we can access the standard screw easier. Now that I have the standard screw, I'm going to take my monitor, line it up, and just slowly screw in our screw here. Perfect. Now that that's tightened down, I'll swivel it up, tighten down our EVF mounting area, and perfect. There you go. So now I'll take my SmallRig HDMI cable here, and on the back of the SmallHD, I will plug it in to our HDMI in, and I'll take this end of it and plug it into the HDMI out here on our right angle adapter. Now, we have one more thing to worry about here after we actually power up our monitor with a Canon LPE6 battery. We have to talk about how we're running media on this. Now, in the handheld setup, you saw that I was using a Samsung T5 SSD handle. But for this portion, I'm going to use the T5 mounting clip, just because if we had the handle on, it would be a problem. It might get in the way. So for those instances, I would actually go for the T5 mounting clip that would go on your camera. And for that, it really depends how you like to mount yours. I'm gonna mount mine right here to keep cable space nice and tight. There are 2 1/4-20 screws that go in really easily. I'm gonna grab my multi-tool again, size up the screw. All right, it's the smaller one. Perfect. Then I'm gonna just screw this in real quick. Like I said earlier, time on set is always crucial. So if you can, know your rig and know your setup so you can make setup time as fast as possible. Now that I have my T5 handle holder screwed in, I'm gonna take my Samsung T5 and bring it right in here. There are 2 clamps here. The first clamp that you can kind of see, I'll rotate the camera so you can see it even better. The first clamp here is for the T5 itself. So you'll insert the T5 and then tighten down this right here in order to hold the T5 in place. And the second clamp that's at the back here is the clamp for the USB-C. I'm going to get our clamp nice and loose there. I'm going to take our USB-C cable. I'm going to put it into the T5, and then I'm going to tighten down the clamp. This is to prevent data loss from a loose USB-C connector, which can easily happen. And that's about the last thing you want to happen on set, especially after you've been shooting all day, is to realize, oh, the T5 was never connected. But now, that's our basic shoulder rig setup right there. Let's take our handles and we're going to attach them quickly. Now, I built this with the battery plate using a little too much of these 15mm rods, so I'm just going to loosen that quickly. And we're going to move the 15mm rods forward so that way we can attach our handles nice and comfortably. So now that's nice and forward. We're going to lock them down again, and then we're going to take our handles that we built up earlier and attach them right on the front there. Tighten down the handles. And last thing, we're gonna need to attach our lens. So I'm going back to this Zeiss CP2 50mm right on the front of the camera. And there you have it. There is our basic handheld setup with an EVF. So what I can do here is once I have this on my shoulder, I can look up to my EVF monitor, which is gonna be up here. It's actually very much like a Canon C300 type of monitor setup. But as you can see, you've got everything you need here in your DSLR shoulder rig. You've got your monitor up here. You have easy access for focus when you're shooting. You have easy access to your aperture. You can even look at the screen to change settings if you need to. Really, it's everything you need, and this is a nice and comfortable padding. Let's move on to our next part, which is rigging out the Ronin S and flying a Pocket 4K. Welcome back to the final part of the DSLR rigging series in this video, where we're going to be doing our Ronin S rig for our travel and wedding filmmakers, as well as commercial music video, anything you want to be using a Ronin S for. I'm going to start by rigging out the gimbal and the camera, then I will balance the gimbal off camera because it can take a long time to balance gimbals, and then I will bring it back and show you just how stable this rigging system is. So why don't we get started by actually taking out our gimbal here. We're going to just put it off to the side, and we'll come back to that in a quick second. Let's start off by rigging out our Pocket 4K here. And to do that, I have some things already attached. I have my cage attached. I have my bracket for my USB-C and HDMI right angle. And I have my Samsung T5 holder already mounted on top. But let's start by attaching our 15mm rod holder here. And that's going to go just right on the side, and I'm going to take out my multi-tool and attach that. If I can select my proper Allen wrench. I'm going to attach it right there. Now what this is for holding my wireless follow focus. You know, as a single gimbal operator, you might not have an AC on some of these smaller productions, so you might need to pull focus for yourself, especially on a camera without autofocus like the Pocket 4K. So having a wireless follow focus is really crucial. Next, I'm going to attach the SmallRig Ronin S base plate. And what this has actually is spaces for counterweights, which you see here. These are 200-gram counterweights. But on this base plate, there are screws in the screw holes in the back, rather, where you could attach those counterweights. I usually attach them to the camera, but we'll actually have to see, because this is a little different than the rig that I would normally do, because I would run with CFast cards. But just for the purpose of teaching a more broad audience, I'm actually going to rig it up with the Samsung T5 today. So why don't we go ahead and attach our Ronin S plate. I usually offset it on the camera a slight amount to the side. There's just a single screw there. We'll screw that in, and then we'll take our multi-tool and tighten down our single flathead screw there. And once that's nice and tight, we'll bring it up. And at this point, I will actually attach my lens from down here. This is a Sigma 24mm prime, and it also has a 3D printed focus gear on it just to make it easier when I attach my wireless follow focus. And for that wireless follow focus will just slide right on here and slot right into those grooves on this 15mm rod system. And now without the counterweights, this is kind of the base for my gimbal cameras when I'm trying to fly a camera. I'm also not doing any external power solutions. I'm just using a LPE6 battery in the camera just because of weight and flying. The gimbal's gonna weigh enough, the camera weighs a lot, so it can really just take a toll on your back after a long time. But so I like to keep my gimbal cameras nice and slim and lean and mean. So let's put that aside for now. And let's take a look at our Ronin S. So here, the Ronin S, I have a couple things already attached, but for the purpose of the video, I will attach another one so you can see how we rig them out. Here I have a cheese plate on the side with the holder for my Nucleus Nano. I will attach a second cheese plate on the other side just so you can see how we attach those. And for the purpose of this video, I will be doing a proper tri-handle configuration. I will have a dual handle set up on the side and then a back handle coming off the back here. Now, as a filmmaker, you have the option to either do a back handle or side handles as well if you want one or the other, but for the purpose of this, I am doing a tri-handle, which you could also use. So why don't we start off by attaching our cheese plate to the side here. And I will show you on camera. This cheese plate has two simple screws in it, and they also have locking washers on them. They are a smaller screw size, so you're going to want to take your small screw size of your SmallRig multi-tool and come over here and attach them in these two screw holes here. Now personally, I like to get one started and then start the other one and come back and torque them down just to make my life a little easier. Now once that one's screwed in, we'll come back and we'll torque down the bottom one. There we go. Now we have cheese plates installed on the side of the Ronin S. Why don't we go ahead and attach our Nucleus Nano. That'll just slide in right over here into this quick release plate. And it'll just slide down nice and easily right in there. Now we have our camera built and our cheese plates attached to our Ronin S. Let's talk about our handles quickly. I'm going to start by attaching the single handle to the back of the camera here. And for that, I'm going to use this adapter with an airy rosette on the back of it, and this handle, this wood handle with the airy rosette holder in it. What's really awesome about this handle is you have some airy locking pins up here. If you wanted to do an attachment for anything, a monitor arm, really anything, along with another airy locking pin up here, a 3/8 mounting and 2/4 20 mountings, along with a Colt shoe if you wanted to slide in a light, a microphone, really anything you needed to. So let's start by attaching that rosette here. And I like to have this handle actually leaning back a little bit when it's mounted on the Ronin. That way it is a nice ergonomic grip. So once we have those rosettes nice and tight in there, and we like the feeling of that, let's come over to our Ronin S here. And this is gonna slot on the top part of the Ronin S above the nucleus. And you can see it's just a quick turn over, and then we simply tighten this right over here. And I like to have it nice and torqued down. As you can see, our first handle is done. So that is just our simple one extra handle design, which is still a good second point of contact, but preferably I would use 2 handles or even go for our tri-handle configuration. So let's move on to that now. For the dual handles, there are 5 parts to this. You're gonna need the adapter from the Ronin S to your handles, and then there is a handle and a tube for each side. So let's start off by attaching those tubes to the adapter here. You can see that there is a hole there and an insert there, and they just go in like that. And then you screw this on to clamp everything down nice and tight. Perfect. Now I'll come over to this side and we'll do the same thing. Perfect. I'm actually going to tighten that side a little more. And now we'll take our handles and we'll just slide it in, almost like a 15mm rod, but these are of course much bigger. And we'll come over here and do the same on this side. And now just like that, you have a dual handle system built for the Ronin S. Then this will come on the front below the nucleus and onto the main actual battery grip of the Ronin S. It'll slide on simply. And just like the other one, there is a simple screw mount over here, and you'll just tighten that up like so. I want to get this one nice and tight as well, just like the top handle. And just like that, you have a tri-rig configuration for the Ronin S. You can either have it here, or you can come to the middle and here, or even split the difference. Come on this side, or come on this side. There's a lot you can do with this rig here. We'll be right back after I balance the camera on top of the Ronin S. Now that we have this gimbal fully rigged out here, I just want to take a brief moment to show you the versatility of it and what's kind of going on here. So let's start on top of the camera. We have our Samsung T5 SSD mounted. We have our Nucleus Nano mounted to our 15mm rod mount coming off the cage. We have our 2 cheese plates on the side, one holding our Nucleus Nano handle. And then here we have our actual 2 double handle grip and then our single handle grip on the back here. Now, there's a few different reasons you would want an extra point of contact on a camera or a gimbal. Really, it just adds stability. So what these handles allow you to do is just be extra stable when you're moving your gimbal. So when you're coming here and it's super versatile having these handles here, especially having the tri-handle configuration. Because if you, depending on what hand you're dominant with, you can either grab the back handle and the side handle. So then you have a double grip here. And this is good for tilt shots or really any kind of shooting. Or you can switch over to this side and hold it like this. Or if you want to do simply a tilt shot, I would grab it with the back handle here along with this grip down here. And I'd go in for a tilt shot and bring it back up. Really, SmallRigs products just really help make your cameras and your gimbals really just more versatile and allow you to do more creative things with the gear, because let's not forget that the gear is just the tool you're using, but the better tool you have, the better end product you are going to make. So that's going to do it for our DSLR side of this video. So that's been with the Pocket 4K, but just a reminder, you could swap in any camera into this. You could swap in a Sony a7S, a Canon R5 or R6, and you just need your camera specific parts like a cage or any other accessories. But for now, we're gonna move on to our next part of this video series, which is gonna be professional cameras. And for that rigging, I'm gonna be using the Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro G2. We'll see you in a second. Welcome back to our final part of our SmallRig video presentation here at ProFusion 2020. For this part of the video, we'll be talking about how to rig out your more professional cinema camera. For this example, we'll be using the Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro G2. But just a reminder, you could swap this if you're using a Sony FS7, like we're actually shooting on here, a Red Komodo, or any other large body cinema camera. You just need your camera specific parts. Now, unlike DSLRs, many cinema cameras don't actually use a cage, or at least a full cage. The only one that I could really actually think about off the top of my head would be the Arri Alexa Mini, or Mini LF. But for more bigger cameras like the Ursa Mini Pro or the or Sony's, they tend to use just cheese plates. So for that, we'll be using our SmallRigs cheese plates for this camera. So let's get started in building a handheld rig here. Now, to start, I'm gonna turn the camera around here, and I'm gonna attach our side cheese plate. On the Ursa Mini, that's attached with a single screw to an Arri rosette, and there's the Arri rosette on this side. So we're gonna come over here and attach our Arri rosette here. Get that screwed in nice and tight. Great. And now on the bottom, I have actually off camera already installed our base plate here. This base plate actually goes into our additional VCT14 base plate. So let me grab that from down below. Now you can see in the VCT plate that I have here and shoulder pad for our shoulder rig. This is a really comfortable shoulder pad, and it is great for my documentary work. But here you even have some Arri rosettes to attach your handles, or you'll use the dog bone like I will showcase later. But since it has this removable, it's great for storage, but it has a quick release here and a little tied on over here. So let's start by sliding in the Blackmagic into the quick release and tightening it down over here. And perfect. That's our first step for attaching, for rigging up our camera. And shoulder rig is attaching our shoulder pad and quick disconnect. Now, since we are using the Blackmagic EVF, we will need the specific Blackmagic SmallRig part here for the Blackmagic EVF. And that's gonna sit right on top there with 3/4 20 screws. And we're just gonna screw that in really quick. Just like that, 3 simple screws on top here. And next we will slot in our EVF. So the EVF just slides in the grooves here. And we'll bring it in. Perfect. Now we will install our top handle with our Arri locking pins on the back for our Hollywood handle that I have built out of SmallRig parts. So I'm going to slide in our top handle here, and the top handle will be held down with 3/4 20 screws as well. And on the front here, if you don't want to use the Blackmagic EVF, even though this top handle is made for the Blackmagic EVF, you have a 15mm rod holder here, so you could attach another EVF through SmallRig's EVF mounting system, or a monitor like a Small HD. But for the handle here, we're going to just tighten these 3/4 20 screws like so. Make sure our top handle is nice and tight on there. And perfect. So there we go. On the front here, I'm going to attach our 15mm rods into their designated slots and lock them down. On a more professional camera, especially with a crew, you'd be using these 15mm rods a lot more actually than you would be using them on a more compact setup like a DSLR. What we use these 15mm rods for is focus pullers and wireless follow focus, along with matte boxes. In this example, I won't have any because it's just a shoulder rig. But in others, you would see a matte box or follow focuses on the front there. But let's go around to the back here, and we're going to attach our Hollywood handle with Arri locking pins. And I'm going to demonstrate 2 of them, but I'm going to keep the rest already built up just to save some time. I'm first going to plug in my viewfinder on the side here. Now for the Hollywood handle that I have here, we are just using a couple of these SmallRig parts here. We have 3 of these extensions that come off the back of this top handle, and then a right angle piece. And I use the airy locking pin, which if you watched our part 1 of this video, I explained in depth. There's 2 locking pins and a 3/8 screw, and that simply slots into the receiving airy locking mechanism over here. And the way I like to tighten these down is I take my multi-tool and one of these smaller Allen keys, and you can see these holes in here, and then I like to push down and really tighten that down so it's not going anywhere. And this is actually how I would normally keep my camera built up. I would always have this separate and this top handle always on here just for ease of use and quick assembly on set. And so for the final part of our Hollywood handle, we will take our airy locking pin and go back here. Now, what I really use this a lot for is actually tripod use. If I have it on a tripod and I don't have access to my tripod's handle, I can always grab on here and use this as my pan and my tilt. It's also great if I'm really rigging this out for a large production. I can put wireless transmitters here, I can put SSDs. There just gives me so many mounting points here and just gives me so much flexibility, and that's what's great about these SmallRig parts. But after that, you're really almost done. We're gonna go with my favorite lens, which is the Zeiss CP2 50mm again. And for a lot of my documentary shoots, this is actually one of the lenses I would gravitate towards if I was out around and shooting. So I would grab that just like so. And then down below, I would grab my handles. Now, if you watched the video earlier in this video series, I explained a lot of these rigging essentials a lot more. I explained how to set up your handles in the shoulder rig part of the DSLR section. But for now, I'm just gonna attach 2 last airy rosettes here. You can get them nice and tight. This one has the SmallRig wooden handle on the left side of the camera for me. And on the right side, I'm gonna use the Blackmagic handle that came with the Ursa Mini that I can connect via link cable to record for me. And that's great as a documentary shooter to have that flexibility. And then that just slides right onto the front of your 15mm rods there. And then it locks down for safekeeping. Just like that. And then there you go. There is your cinematic shoulder rig using the Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro G2. It's really a comfortable rig, especially with the shoulder pad here. I can just feel that I could be shooting here for hours and never get tired of it. It's nice and comfortable. I have quick access to my focus rings and my iris rings. It feels ergonomic, and I can even drop these down lower if I need a more comfortable fit. Just like that. And then I also can come to my top handle here and my Hollywood handle if I needed to get a really specific shot. For that, that'll wrap it up for our shoulder rigged part of the cinematic video series. And now let's move on to a tripod rig, and I'll be creating something special for the first AC. Now here in front of me right now is our fully rigged out Ursa Mini Pro G2. And right now I'm gonna be doing a basic tripod rig. And for this, we're gonna do a wireless transmitter to a first AC setup for pulling focus. Since I had the camera all rigged out from the shoulder rig portion of this video minus the front handles, I just decided that this would be a cool little thing for us to do to show you what you can do with SmallRigs products in a professional environment. So why don't we start by taking our VCT camera with its VCT plate on it and putting it on the tripod with its VCT plate on it as well. We're gonna take that up here, put it down, and we're gonna push forward until we hear it click, just like that. We know our camera is securely in place there. Now for this monitor rig, what we're gonna start by doing is attaching our monitor rig right here to our camera up top, and then that's gonna be for our wireless transmitter. So we're gonna take that real quick. We're gonna take that and put it right up top up here. Perfect. And then I'm gonna bring that up. The SmallRig parts have a lot of resistance for the monitors, and that was just so tough because there's not a monitor on there actually acting as a counterweight. We're gonna take our Hollyland Mars 400S and mount it on top here. And then we're gonna take our short SDI here and plug that in. And perfect. Now that that's done, let's talk about our first AC wireless setup here. We're going to be using a wooden handle here from SmallRig, the Hollyland receiver, and a SmallHD 501 as our monitor. So let's start out by taking our ball head mount here and screwing it into the bottom of our monitor. And we're going to take that and slide it right into the cold shoe mount here of our SmallRig wooden handle. And I'm just going to tighten it down until it's nice and secure, and then loosen the ball head so we can flip it around and look at it. Perfect. Well, actually, I'm going to put this a little bit to the front. Perfect. Now we're going to be using the Nucleus Nano with this, so we got to mount our Nucleus Nano bracket. It's just a simple singular screw here. We'll take our Allen key, or actually our multi-tool with our Allen key, and we're gonna attach it right to the side here with a 1/4-20. Normally there would be an airy locking pin on the side of this handle, but I'm using a thread adapter in order to mount our Nucleus Nano. So let's mount our Nano really fast. Perfect, now that's there. And then we are gonna take our screw in the bottom here. Once we get it threaded in really quick, and we're going to mount our receiver. It's just another simple 1/4-20 screw that's going in the bottom of this handle here. And I'm going to take it and rotate on the Hollyland a little bit. And perfect. So we have that. Let's take another SDI cable here, and let's go into there and into our Mars 400S down here. And the last thing, all we need to do is attach our Nucleus focus motor to the side of our camera here. That's going to be on our 15mm rails. And we're going to attach it to our geared focus ring on our CP2. And then we're going to come to the back here and attach our P-tap to USB adapter. I'm actually going to do that on the side of this plate here. Perfect. And let's come here and plug in our focus motor. Well, now that we have signal coming from our wireless transmitters, we can see that this would be a great little first AC rig here. I have my monitor displaying what I'm seeing, and I can just pull focus here. I could walk around with this all day and be great. You know, in a professional capacity, there will be lots of people on set, so you'll have a first AC that's pulling focus for you, as I'm demonstrating here on this professional camera rig. We've got our Hollyland Mars 400S mounted right up top here, using a SmallRig monitor mount on our tripod rig here. Now I could rig this out a little more, but I decided just to keep it simple for this video and build you a nifty little first AC rig with a wireless monitor. That's going to do it here for ProFusion 2020 with SmallRig. I want to thank everybody at SmallRig for having me on as their brand ambassador for this trade show. It was just a blast creating these videos, and I really hope that you learned a thing or two about what SmallRig has to offer for your camera and rigging needs. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to them on Facebook or to follow me on Instagram at Will_Hahn_Productions. You can also like us on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, and make sure to join the products community as well. That's going to do it. I really want to thank everybody, especially my crew that is behind the camera for these last 2 videos. They have been nothing but incredibly helpful. So thank you, crew. It has been a blast. and I look forward to doing more events with SmallRig in the future. Please stay safe, please stay healthy, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.